Midgar is the most technologically advanced city on the planet of Gaia, and its large circular structure is comprised of 2 levels, with an upper plate dividing the wealthier citizens from the impoverished citizens below. Midgar's development is overseen by Reeve, though he supports the city's revolutionary factions from within the Shinra building via a remote-controlled doll, Kate Sith. Characters in FF7 often refer to Midgar as a pizza because of the way it's sliced up into sectors. Sector 0 is the central district and home to Shinra HQ. Between each sector there is a Mako reactor providing electricity to the city. To go from the upper city to the slums, one must take a train that goes downward on a spiraling track or go through the city's sewer system. Sector 1 is the first location visited in FF7. Cloud Strife has gone to Sector 1 with Avalanche for the purpose of blowing up the Sector 1 Mako reactor. They escape to Sector 8 on their way back to Sector 7. Sector 8 is an art and business district, and the play Loveless is being performed there. This is also where Aerith can be found selling flowers. Cloud makes another escape here over a bridge to the Sector 7 slums, which is home to Tifa's bar, the Seventh Heaven, and also Avalanche's secret hideout. Nearby, there's a train graveyard where old trains are left to die, and in town there are shops and homes, like Johnny's home, which is a small but comfortable space. Before heading out, we can pick up materia at the materia shop, or buy some weapons like this assault rifle for Barrett. On the second floor of the shop is the beginner's hall, where there's information about save points and treasure chests, and the third floor is an inn with 3 grimy beds. A significant defining feature of Sector 7 is the support pillar holding up the upper plate. Later, this pillar is destroyed and collapses, resulting in the destruction of the entire surrounding area. After attempting to blow up another Mako reactor, Cloud finds himself in Sector 5, having fallen through the roof of a dilapidated church. Aerith, who lives in the Sector 5 slums, brings Cloud to her house, which is one of the few areas where sunlight can be seen in Midgar. The house is bright and beautifully decorated, offering a welcome contrast to the gloomy slums where life continues to be miserable. Consider the metal pipe where one individual has made his home and he's suffering from some kind of terrible food poisoning. In the item shop, if you try to open the little fridge, the owner will yell at you and ask if you have any manners. The weapon shop is littered with empty beer cans and cigarette butts. We also have access to a materia shop selling fire, ice, lightning, and restore. On the southern edge of town, there's also a 2-story house, where the player can find the first Turtle Paradise flyer of the game on the second floor wall, and 5 gil hiding in a little boy's secret drawer. Connected to Sector 5 is Sector 6, reached by passing through a collapsed expressway full of dangerous creatures like Hell House, and a rundown playground leading to Wall Market. In the southern half of Wall Market, there's an inn with a vending machine that can be used by the player if we stay overnight after speaking to the materia shop owner who wants something from it. Elsewhere in Wall Market is the diner, where we can eat some food, and if the player responds favorably when asked about the food, then he or she receives a coupon that can be traded in at the pharmacy, which can then be used to obtain a digestive. The digestive can be given to a sick woman at the bar in the northern half of Wall Market. To thank us, she'll give us a bottle of perfume that Cloud is able to use when dressing up as a girl. In a clothing boutique, the cashier tells us that her father is in a creative slump and drinking his life away. He eventually agrees to make a dress for Cloud as it offers him something interesting to do. Nearby this bar is another weapons shop selling metal knuckles and more. Next door, the player can meet up with some weightlifting wrestlers, and the curtains hanging over the doorway say men, men, men. We can play a squatting minigame to get a wig, and to the south of town, the player finds the Honeybee Inn, which also has a set of curtains hanging over the doorway which says woman woman on them in a cute Chinese font. On the other side of the curtains is the vestibule, and the doors of this room provide access to a variety of strange rooms for, sleeping. There's also one room for the Honeybee girls who are getting ready to entertain clients. All the way to the north of town is Don Corneo's mansion. The Chinese characters above Don Corneo's room say large serving, and through the doors we enter his office, where he selects female candidates to spend the night with him, and his large bed has the character for heaven on it. On the front of the bed, there's a character that looks like the one for a bowl of rice, which is pronounced don in Japanese, like Don Corneo. But this character is also very similar to the one for a well, perhaps alluding to the trap door in front of the bed leading down to the sewers. The other rooms of the mansion are either for prisoners or for Corneo's lackeys who hang out in this greasy break room. In the last corner of Wall Market is the wall itself that leads up precipitously to the headquarters, where Midgar's government is being manipulated by President Shinra. After infiltrating Shinra HQ, the player makes an escape on the Midgar Expressway, which ends abruptly at the outskirts of the city. From here, the player finally takes their first step on FF7's world map, leaving behind the game's first sprawling city. We make our way at last to the little town of Kalm, a clean, quiet place, comprised mainly of a few shops, a bar, and an inn. The town is powered by Mako energy, but the citizens there don't over-rely on it, making use of candles and other renewable forms of energy. The residents in the private houses are divided on whether Mako energy has had a good or bad effect as a whole. Their homes are cozy and traditional. In one house, there's a strange spiral staircase leading up to a storage room containing a chest with a peacemaker, a gun that can be later given to Vincent. Kalm's shopping area is a classy pub with a few regulars discussing the terrorist attacks in Midgar. The materia store has a good selection, and we can pick up earth, poison, steel, sense, and heal. At the weapons shop, we can grab a mithril saber, a cannonball gun, a mithril claw, a full metal staff, and a mithril armlet. The inn in town is small but comfortable with clean fluffy beds and cozy candlelight, and Cloud decides to tell us a heartwarming story there. From here, the player heads out across the continent, reaching Chocobo Ranch on the way, where the chocobos dance for you if interacted with and give you a summon materia. The ranch is too small to be considered a town. It has a grazing area for chocobos, a barn with stable, a wheat silo, and a quaint farmhouse. We find out that a family used to live here, but now the children live with their grandfather after their parents died. And the little girl tells us that's why the price of the chocobo food is so high. Grasses can be purchased here for luring and catching chocobos, which, if caught, help us reach our next area across the swamp and through a cave. Technically, Fort Condor isn't a town either. It's a large, towering rock rising up from the flat landscape on which a Mako reactor has been built. But a large condor bird has made its nest there, and a rebel faction trying to defend the planet wants to keep Shinra away from it. Shinra frequently tries to storm the fort and overtake it, but so far they've been unsuccessful. From the base of the fort, a hanging rope and then a rope ladder provide access to the inner chambers. There's not much to buy here or do except the Fort Condor tower defense game. We can head on, meeting Yuffie in a nearby forest if we want to, and finally arrive in Junon, which is another major city in FF7. Formerly, Junon was a peaceful fishing village before serving as the location of Shinra's military installation, blocking out the sun and polluting the sea. The fishing industry has long since died out, but the villagers continue to eke out a living in the shadow of Shinra's new city, Upper Junon. The military installation contains an enormous defense cannon powered by huge materia. There's also a port of call with a cargo ship and a submarine and an airbase. Our first impressions of Junon are of the old city. Most of the people living there are old, except for Priscilla, who hangs around at the beach playing with dolphins. Through a set of metal doors, there is an elevator going to Upper Junon, and later on the guard can be bribed to let us in, but for now we have to make our way up by the metal scaffolding, crossing through the airbase and then disguising ourselves as a soldier to gain access to Upper Junon. Outside is Junon's main street, lined with the brutal stone architecture reminiscent of Soviet-era buildings. Downstairs from the weapons shop selling hard edge, grand glove, striking staff, and more, is the pub, where Rude has been known to have a drink. The player can grab Seal and Revive from the materia store, There's also several apartments that are barracks for soldiers with multiple floors of rooms, study areas, and a kitchen. And in the basement, we can find the ghosts of several construction workers who were killed in the fall of the Sector 7 plate. If we head across town, there's actually another weapons shop that doesn't sell very much, and one shop has resorted to using cute girls to attract customers. After shopping, we hop on a cargo ship and make our way across the sea to Costa del Sol. This coastal resort town is one of the more prosperous venues outside of Midgar because of its thriving tourism industry. President Shinra used to own a luxury villa there until being killed. Cloud can purchase President Shinra's former villa for 300,000 gil if he talks to the real estate agent resting on the bed. Though small, Costa del Sol is composed of a harbor with a helipad, a beach, a comfortable inn, a bar, and shops. And many of Midgar's elite upper classes are likely to be frequent visitors. When the party arrives in town, they split up to do some much-needed relaxation. Johnny from Midgar has moved there with his new girlfriend, and when Tifa decides to stay there catching up on old times, Cloud appears a bit jealous. If the player has recruited Yuffie, she can be found working part-time at the materia shop, though she clearly has ulterior motives, and the owner of the shop reveals to us the next day that Yuffie has run off with his money and materia. Pretty brutal, Yuffie. One unexpected guest is Hojo, who's either incredibly handsome up close or rich enough to be paying for some extra attention. After getting rejuvenated, the player heads up Mount Corel, toward the town of North Corel, a fairly new settlement. The original town was destroyed by Shinra because of the terrorists who lived there. North Corel is the town built by the survivors of that massacre, but life is obviously rough there. Residents have a bleak outlook on life, with nothing to hope for or look forward to. Their children have no future, they live in tents on the rocky ground. There's a pretty rough looking inn, and merchants operate from behind makeshift counters made of old junk. At the item shop, we can grab the transform materia, and at the weapons shop, we can get Cloud's Force Stealer and Molotov cocktails. Just your typical small town stuff. Next to town, there's a railway car bringing us up to the Gold Saucer, where we can meet Kate Sith. During our time there, a mass murder takes place, and the party gets blamed for it. As a consequence, we get sent to the Coral prison colony at the base of the Gold Saucer. The sense of desolation there is palpable. One of the prisoners is Barrett's former best friend, Dine, who's traumatized by the past and commits suicide. However, he's clearly not the only prisoner to have lost his sanity. Following Cloud around is a strange man who laughs if spoken to. 3 other prisoners standing in a row will give us fake tips that we should do the opposite of. If the player needs to rest, we can examine the front part of this truck, where there are some reclining seats to sleep in. A well in the center of the prison leads down to a pit with a chest, and hidden beneath a layer of the pre-rendered background is a bizarre toy-like man referred to by fans as the Doll. This depressing place is inescapable, and quicksand surrounds it on all sides, causing to sink all who dare to flee. The only option we have to escape is to compete in the Gold Saucer's Chocobo race, which allows criminals to participate, sort of like gladiators in ancient Rome fighting for their freedom. After winning, we're gifted a land buggy and cross the desert, heading over to the former home of Zack Fair. Located in a jungle to the south, Gongaga Village previously had a Mako reactor, which is now destroyed. They decided to reject Mako energy and live simple lives. We can visit the parents of Aerith's ex-boyfriend, Zack, who live in small, thimble-shaped huts, sending up silver smoke from slender chimneys. And in the south of town is a graveyard where a single flower has been delicately placed. In the shops, there's a pretty good selection of accessories like silver glasses. We can buy magic like Mystify and Time. Clearly this is not a common destination for tourists though, because the inn is just a simple guest room. From here, it's a quick drive through the mountains to one of the most iconic locations of the game. Red 13 is greeted at the village gates, where his true name is revealed, and the party splits up, leaving Cloud to explore at his own leisure. The village is centered around a large communal bonfire, and tall ladders guide the player up to an elevated item shop. We can also visit Red 13's room, with pillows and rugs strewn about on the floor. Elsewhere in the village, we can buy weapons like Butterfly Edge, Tiger Fang, Heavy Vulcan, Prism Staff, and more. And then, heading up to another level, we can purchase MP Plus or HP Plus materia. Outside the materia shop, there's an iron door leading down into the caves of the G, where dangerous monsters lurk, or we can take the ladder going up to Red 13's grandfather, who lives in a celestial planetarium. An elevator brings Cloud and friends up to the planetarium itself, where we learn about the cycle of life and how planets eventually die. The next day, the player is able to head out to their next destination, Nibelheim. Cloud and Tifa, who remember Nibelheim being burnt to the ground by Shinra, are surprised to find it intact. The oldest building in town is the Shinra Mansion. Though abandoned, the Shinra Mansion basement still contains a secret library of confidential reports. Nibelheim itself is subdued and mournful. The town is populated by paid actors who are there to cover up evidence of the tragedy that occurred at the hands of Sephiroth, who massacred the original inhabitants, including Tifa's father. Also in town are the failed Sephiroth clones, which are hooded and dressed in black robes. These clones were the former residents of Nibelheim who got experimented on by Hojo during his attempt to create another Sephiroth. They appear to have lost their minds due to the trauma of being Hojo's test subjects. They can be found lurking in the corners of Nibelheim's homes, pacing back and forth, shaking, and muttering to themselves. Everybody in town that we talk to pretends not to know anything about it. They're clearly part of Shinra's cover-up operation. Before we leave, we can search the Shinra Mansion for clues to the combination of a safe, which, if successfully opened, unleashes a powerful monster known as Lost Number. If defeated, the player is rewarded with Red 13's ultimate limit break, the Odin materia, and a basement key that unlocks the door to Vincent's resting place. From here, the player is free to pass through Mount Nibel on their way to Rocket Town, where a derelict rocket stands in the middle of town as a sorry testament to a jaded man's failed dreams. The town itself has sprung up around the former launch pad, which Shinra previously erected under the supervision of Sid Highwind, who was supposed to pilot the rocket into outer space. The town is populated mostly by former mechanics of the rocket. At the weapon shop, we can buy a shotgun for Vincent, as well as the barrier and exit materia. The local inn is quite well maintained, as the town seems to be a bit of a tourist attraction for the rocket. There's a bar and restaurant inside the lobby of the inn, where locals sit around to have a drink and gossip about Sid. Hopefully you don't need the bathroom though, because it's occupied. This is one of the largest and cleanest inns of any town so far, with 2 full bathrooms and plenty of comfortable beds. Life must be dull for the locals though, as evidenced by one man in this house who's losing his mind from boredom. Many of the locals appear to feel this way. In fact, one man standing in the center of town has nothing better to do but stare up at the rocket. As a friendly gesture for talking to him, he gives Cloud the Yoshiyuki sword, which is pretty good. The largest house in town belongs to Sid, the former would-be pilot of the rocket, and in the backyard sits the tiny Bronco, a dual-propeller airplane. If the player examines it, they meet Shira. Several years ago, she inadvertently caused the failure of the launch mission, and Sid has clearly not forgiven her. The player is able to access the rocket by heading north through town, climbing inside and meeting Sid, who will join up with us. Rufus and Palmer show up and try to steal the tiny Bronco. We escape, flying away on the damaged ship and crash landing into the sea. From here we can use the tiny Bronco as a boat, and if we get too close to Wutai, Yuffie robs us, forcing us to chase her down. This part of the game is entirely optional, but very memorable. Wutai seems to refer in name to the 5 holy mountains of China. Situated on a river, Wutai was formerly a proud and powerful nation-state. The people of Wutai were only barely able to maintain their independence, and now the town's only source of income is tourism, draining Wutai's rich culture of its former dignity. When the player arrives, the Turks are in town hunting down Don Corneo, and they can be found eating in a local restaurant. Bonsai trees and landscape paintings line the walls, and the chef appears to be preparing raw fish. Yuffie relents, brings us home, and then confesses everything on this purple rug embellished with the giant Chinese character meaning endure. The whole thing is a trap though, and Yuffie runs away again, bringing us to the north of town in search of her, where we find a more traditional side of Wutai. The rooms are very traditional, with sliding shoji doors, and calligraphy adorns the walls. A secret revolving door leads us to a chest containing a weapon for Red 13, and down the hallway an impressive statue of Wutai's local deity is brilliantly illuminated. This room contains a secret passageway that can be accessed outside via the water ablution pavilion. If we examine it, a switch is activated, opening a secret door into Don Corneo's hideout place. To our surprise, Don Corneo has kidnapped Yuffie and Elena, a Turk, after which she gets shoved off a cliff. Afterwards, Yuffie finally returns our stolen materia, but there's still more to do in town. In the towering pagoda, Yuffie tests her strength by fighting a battle on each floor all by herself, culminating in a battle against her father, Godo, at the very top floor. Yuffie clears the air of her resentment for her father, who's responsible for Wutai's present condition as a cheap tourist attraction, and for this, the player is rewarded with the Leviathan materia. And so, with our magic back and Yuffie in our party, we can finally leave Wutai and get back to the main game. Following a long excursion to the Temple of Ancients, Eris decides to leave the party, not wanting to put us in harm's way as she prays for Holy at the City of Ancients. While there, Cloud begins to have odd sensations, sensing Sephiroth's presence and hearing Aerith's voice. Following the voice, we find an unusual building and descend to an underground section of the city on a glassy staircase. Aerith can be found praying on a water altar. Something bad happens, if you know, you know, so we'll keep it a secret and head out to our next destination, Icicle Inn, at the top of a snowy mountain. Slanted golden sunlight illuminates the snow-topped cabins, in the windows of which the warm, trembling light of fireplaces crackles comfortably. Life appears to be good here. Children make snowmen or go snowboarding, and at the weapons shop, Cloud can pick up the sword Organics, Barrett's micro laser, and more. Nearby is a strange house that doesn't quite fit in with the rest of town though. Inside is Professor Gast's old laboratory, where he and Aerith's mother used to live in hiding from the Shinra Company. The other large building is a house belonging to an old woman in a rocking chair whose cat is curled up comfortably by the fire. A map of the mountain can be found here. And finally, there's the inn itself. Inside are a few tourists from Costa Del Sol who are still wearing their bathing suits. The inn is large and well maintained, with a cozy furnace heating the rooms and a large pub for the snowboarders and skiers who come to visit. We can snowboard on our way to the northern crater, which is quite a journey up precipitous icy cliffs where an old man lives alone in a humble log cabin. Following an encounter with Shinra and Sephiroth, the party is dispersed, with Tifa and Barrett ending up in Junon to await execution. We manage to escape, and the player takes control of Tifa, gaining access to the Highwind airship. The only remaining town not yet visited is Mideel, to the southeast. Mideel is famous for being close to where the life stream reaches the planet's surface. It's quiet and secluded from the rest of the world. The houses are plain, poorly built, undecorated, and a bit dirty. But despite appearances, the weapon shop has some of the best weapons of any shop in the game. The crystal sword, crystal glove, the crystal cross, and the Winchester. In the weapon shop, there's also a locked door, and if Tifa searches behind one of the neighboring houses, she finds an old key that fits into this door, but the weapons dealer confronts us, and he'll give us a cursed ring for being honest. Perhaps because of Mideel's close proximity to the livestream, they happen to have a clinic with well-trained doctors where Cloud is presently suffering from a trauma-induced psychosis. Tifa helps him get over it, and the party reunites in the Highwind. From here, it's possible to revisit many of the game's towns and cities, and we can even return to Midgar using the key to Sector 5 from Bone Village. Things are coming full circle as the party finally returns to where the game began, and we can spend time side questing or bring things to their inevitable conclusion.